Hey there, guys, and welcome back. So, this right here, So yesterday I got home from work, and I ate dinner, and after dinner I was like, yeah, we'll do our hour LiteLike. Hopefully we can get through crafting all the combat encounters for the planet/dungeon, and that will be good work for an hour. And then I kept on going, just a little bit more. I just want to change it a little bit more, and just want to change it a little bit more. And all of a sudden, it was after 9, nearly 9:30. And I looked at the clock. I was like, whoops. All right, so that is where we are at this morning. So obviously, this went a little over the 2 to 3 hour mark that I've been trying to keep it at. And we'll see where exactly we are at right now with the code. Now, the good news is with all that changing that I did, the little bit, at the moment, the demo is in a playable state. I did not leave it. I did not realize it was nearly 9:30 and quit with the demo in a broken state. So we can still play the demo today. So let us hop over to VS Code and get my windows reorganized and get off to the races. So the first thing that I did in the first hour was, where are we at? There we go. Map demo encounters. So I basically took all the encounters that we had in the map demo and just moved them to a different file because the map demo file was getting way too big. And frankly, to read through the map demo file, again, part of this is, again, just being able to read through and see how the file is put together. That's why I have so many comments. So it kind of gets in the way when all you're doing is building encounters. It gets in the way of understanding the rest of the code to have it all in the one file. So I went ahead and, whoops, sorry about that. That is the wrong window. I tried moving another window. There we go. So I went ahead and moved them all over here. Now, because this is a new file, or over here rather, from map demo to map demo encounters. So because this is a new file, I can't really remember all of the changes that happened, unfortunately. The first change I do remember is this stuff. So finish combat here and cycle event. Things that are necessary in order to make this work outside of the scope of the map demo. So I had to make a number of changes like that, which if we come down here to visit colony, also has the cycle event because it needs reference to it. Cycle event on port events. Let's see here. This stuff obviously is going to be mostly new, and we'll get into that in a minute. Yeah, this is the dungeon. Okay, yeah. So it looks like in terms of the stuff that I did it in the first hour, that is basically most of it. Let me check the GitHub right quick, just to see if there's anything else I don't remember off the top of my head. 142. No, that's in collect from cache. Okay, so that is something that happened later. And let's see. Yeah, updating the other file, the map demo, to also point over to the correct functions and provide the correct callbacks for these functions. You know, for providing these things. Likewise, had to happen, obviously speaking. Okay, and I can see where I took the code out of map demo, so I know where we were at with the, where we were at with the encounters. So with the dungeon and station encounters. So we were up to, it looks like, the trader. We were at the trader combat, callback. So first off, this guy gets entered up here. So I moved this up here just to make it easier. This is the max floor. So max floor is always going to have the same thing on stations and planets, dungeons, as I've been calling them. I really should go back through the code and replace all instances of dungeon with planet. It's just dungeon, traditionally speaking, makes more sense to me, which is why I keep on referring to it as a dungeon. But point being is that the last floor is always going to be the same exact thing. So in in stations, it's always just going to be a generic reward event. This one obviously has a message attached to it, and I think most of the time, most of them would have a message attached to them. So that is, set up. It's one of those things, just very simple. It's not, again, I said this before, right? When it comes to designing the encounters, we've already done all the heavy lifting. All it is just writing stuff. So I'm not going to read through all the stuff that I wrote or what all the resources is here. Not really necessary. So we got that set up. Again, just a message and an reward encounter. We got another choice encounter up here. This one's a little bit different because if you look right, where is the choice? It's right here. So exit button false. I don't think, and I checked the GitHub, but I don't think, let's see, I had this set up GUI encounters before. GitHub. Yeah, okay, I did not have this set up before, so we can go ahead over to GUI encounters and look at this. So, where did I have the note for this? I think I have the note for this down here. Yeah. Yeah. No, maybe. Where is this at? Oh, here it is. Here's the note for it. So, some GUI, some choice encounters, the default answer. So the last time when we were dealing with the trader, right? We had 3 options, and then we also had just a continue walking option, basically. So let's go ahead and look at that right quick. So we had these 3 options, and then we had the exit button as do not trade, right? But visually speaking, so that makes sense in this one because we have 3 tiers of buy, and then we have a do not buy, which is a separate category. In this next one I did, we basically have a take the action or don't take the action. Those are our only 2 options. So visually speaking, it doesn't make sense to have the exit button at the bottom as do not take the action and only have one choice displayed on the screen. So for that reason, I came over here and I modified this. So, and honestly, this note should be down 1 more, but point being, down here, if you look, we have this code right here. I'm trying to scroll over it. There we go. So button text question mark. So if we have button text, then put the button in to begin with the button text. Otherwise, put in an empty string, which basically means the button's not there. So if the button text is falsy, then we will not display the button at all. Now, it's one of those things, in theory, that could end up with us stuck in a place where we can't actually proceed. So if we have 2 choice options that both require resources that the player do not have, then there is no exit button to just exit. You're just stuck there forever, which is in theory a problem, but frankly it should never actually come up. All events should be appropriately designed because to some degree, because again, I want to do some amount of randomness in the event generation. However, they should not be so random that they'll generate a choice event with no possible way to exit. So one of those things could technically be a problem, but is not actually going to be a problem in reality. So that's on floor 2. Yeah, floor 2. And again, as I've said before, all this is hard-coded right now. All this would be randomly generated otherwise, so we would not need the else if tier 1, if floor 2. It would just be if tier 1, get random tier 1 encounter. Again, just as a reminder, that's how this is supposed to be set up, but for the demo, we are hard-coding it. Then here's tier 3, let's see. Or floor 3 is what I meant. Floor 2, where is... Oh, there it is. Okay, sorry. I skipped a floor. This floor is so small that I skipped it. So floor 2 was just a message. So it's one of those things, encounters in stations may just be flavor text. That's a design decision I've made. I've just made the decision that sometimes you get lucky, you just get some flavor text as your floor in this station. Otherwise, this is the floor 3 was the choice encounter that I was just talking about. And then floor 4, because again, floor 5 is not going to be in tier 2, it's going to be handled up above. Floor 4 is this interesting encounter. And this one took me a little while to craft only because I was trying to decide how I wanted to handle it. And what's interesting about this one is we start out with all the way down here, technically speaking, because all that stuff is callback information. So down here, we start out with this three-way choice. And again, no exit button. It's going to be one of these three choices. There is no just ignore. So you have these three choices, and this is a diamond-shaped encounter, which is what makes it interesting. So because it's a diamond-shaped encounter, which is to say it branches and then reconverges to a point, I actually can reuse the encounters. So what that lets me do is set up different functions to just create the encounter and return it so that I don't have to write it multiple times. So, for example, on this first one, on this value 0, again, this gets called back to engage callback. So in engage callback, you can see how I use, if it's 2 or 1, we have repeated callbacks. These are callbacks that would happen on the next stage. Otherwise, we say, okay, we diverged a little bit, but now you're down to just 2 options. We cut down your options between one of the other 2 options you did not choose in the first encounter, which are the fight and pay callbacks. And then that callback for this function takes us down here, which again, we only have 2 options, so it's either one of these 2, and we already have these 2 defined down here, fight and pay. And then we just toss that encounter onto the list like we did before. And then at that point, these are the only remaining, these are both the dead ends. These are both the ends of the decision tree, the choice tree. So they will get resolved as normal and exit from this floor. You exit from the floor after going through those guys. If we look at them really quick, pay and fight, you can see on exit is our callback function for exiting. And on exit, in the way we've been formatting the dungeon and station, is the callback to go back to build next segment. That's what the on exit callback is. And build next segment is build next floor. So we exit the floor and move on. So that is everything I wrote for the station. Station was done more or less. No, actually, it was definitely done in hour 2. So station was done in hour 2. And for hours 3 through, let's see, it was 5 to 9, 5:50 to 9:20. So that's 6, 7, 8, 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours. So 3.5 hour session was handling a bunch of other stuff that caused me issues, to put it simply. So I'm going to pull the GitHub back up because, let's see. I got to figure out what exactly, because there was a lot. I was just rolling. I wasn't really keeping track of what I was doing. I was just, all right, let's get this done. Let's fix everything. So, okay, I think this was the first thing I did in hour 3, the start of hour 3. I believe what I started with before I actually did the dungeon. One second. Sorry. Before I did the dungeon, I actually wanted to make sure that when you cleared an area, it converted to a port. We had talked about that being one of the core functionalities of the game. And again, this is taken from A Dark Room. Whenever you clear a structure, it turns into a house for you to visit to collect from. Collect resources so you can continue traveling. So that's what we did. So we added in this not the get symbol location. That's not the one we added. We added in replace symbol. There we go. Replace symbol at location. So previously on this line, we were doing this code right here. So this code used to be up there, and all these locations used to be player.location or self.player location rather. This used to be player location, and replacement used to be player character. So all I did was substitute out those for generic values, generic location, and generic replacement. And now we have a function to replace a map, something on a map, with a different symbol. So that was pretty simply to put together, and then we just have to do the clear structure at location, which specifically converts a structure to one of these structures right here. The unexplored port, dungeon symbol, and station symbol converts that to a port symbol. And again, all that needs is just the location, because it knows what it's converting to, and it knows what it can convert from. And it can just do the rest of the work itself using replace location. I do have this trigger event in here. Now, as I mentioned over in the demo, the map demo, I went ahead and bound to this. Let's see, map change. So I bound to this reload map, to this event. That is not actually going to do anything in practice, because the areas that we are clearing are our character are already standing on, which means that we can't actually see the symbol we're converting to, right? So if we convert a unexplored port to a regular port, we can't actually see that because we're standing on the port right now. Our character is overlapping the symbol. We only see our character symbol. However, what it will do, and we need to do this eventually, I think potentially. It depends on how I end up doing it, but I imagine it's potentially the Fog of War. When we add Fog of War, we could call a map change event at that point to show the changes in Fog of War, at which point, because Fog of War is not, specifically where our character is standing, it may be relative to where our character is standing, or maybe not, because again, there are events in the game, or at least there were events in a dark room that revealed parts of the map without you having to travel there. So that, in that case, is why this is in here at the moment. Because I figured eventually, if we use the map change function, or event rather, to cover Fog of War changes, then it's useful at that point. Because fact of the matter is the way we're doing this right now is we're redrawing the whole entire map. We're not redrawing portions of the map. So if we redraw the whole entire map every single time Fog of War changes, then there's no real difference between, what exactly is causing the change. So that is that change. That was pretty simple and straightforward. But since I did that at the beginning of the third hour, that meant that I did not have the dungeon encounter done. And as I said before in previous episodes, I wanted to make sure to get the dungeon encounter done by the end of this session, because it was mostly, as I said before, just designing the encounters, which does not take very much effort, or I should say I don't need to explain very much. We had some interesting situations right here with the forking. This is dungeon, but up here with the forking situation, the decision tree, we had some interesting situation with this decision tree, but the dungeon is going to be a bunch of fight, right? It's just going to be a bunch of combat encounters. So it's going to take me 5 seconds right now to explain to you combat encounters, right? So let me go ahead and explain them. We have our introductory text here on floor 0 as always. And then, again, this is the boss floor right here, so this is special. But the rest of the floors is just fight an enemy, fight an enemy, fight an enemy. Or actually, this one is, so in a dark room, when you're going through dungeons, at about the halfway point, if I recall correctly, you had to light a torch to get deeper into the dungeon because it got too dark. So this is our version of it. So our torches are geolocation markers, so you do not get lost, and so that you can communicate back with the transport. It is a signal booster as well as positioning. So as you get halfway through this dungeon, it asks you to place a geolocation marker. So there's that, and then here's another fight encounter down here, and then finally, like I said, the boss encounter, which again is very simple, very close to the same exact thing. It's just afterwards we have a little bit of text saying, hey, you did it, and here is your treasure trove at the end of the dungeon. This is your big loot box that you get for clearing the map. So, as I said, explaining this much takes like 5 seconds, which is why I really needed to have this done by the end of this session. Now, however, the problem is that designing all this, because we do not have a database of monsters yet, was actually difficult. I mean, not difficult, but it was time consuming. You know, I had to create weapons, create items, create monsters, come up with monster names, come up with weapon names, come up with armor for the monsters, assign values to all that, put them into the JSONs. You know, so there's extra items added to this JSON here. Let's see, an extra armor right here. There's extra weapons up here. Weapons are up here. So there's 2 extra weapons up here. Encounters, we have 2 different encounters added to this list. We only had the bandit before. Now we have these 2 combatants here. So that all had to get added. And that obviously took up time, point being. And then we had a couple other things that ended up happening as a part of debugging. Oh, actually, sorry, backtrack really quick. I totally missed this one because it was in, well, it used to be in map demos. Didn't it used to be? Okay, yes, this changes both in map demo encounters and, or no, it shouldn't be. It should just be in encounters GUI. Where's the other change at? Oh no, it is. Yeah, it is both in map demo encounters. But point being, is I said that I should be doing this, and this happened in hour 1 along with those other changes I mentioned about, you know, for example, this line right here not displaying the or actually no, that did not happen in hour 1. Point being, some of the minor fixes that I had to do in hour 1 to get everything evened out is we changed this from choice.value to choice, because I said, you know, it doesn't make any sense that I'm only sending the value over. And that meant that when we did this encounter with the trader up here, right there, in the callback, I had to adjust this to accept choice and then, you know, go over choice.value instead, which was, again, a very simple change. And hour 1 was very productive with a lot of stuff getting done. So it wasn't that big of a deal. That did not slow me down at all. Now, the other things that ended up happening as a consequence of me working through the dungeon and getting a bunch of other stuff done. Yeah, this is going to be difficult to get to figure out where exactly everything comes into play, because it was a lot all over the place. First thing, and yeah, I think this might have been towards the beginning of hour 3. Over in encounters. Where is, that's choice encounter, so I need to go up. Over here in encounters, in the encounter sequence. First off, if we are not past encounters, before I was passing empty arrays, I was just constantly passing empty arrays. That's kind of a waste of time, right? So I decided to skip that. So now you can just initialize encounter sequence without any arguments, because if you do not pass this encounters argument in here, this is now undefined, and we tried to do array from undefined, and that is a problem. So that was a change that had to happen. The next thing was, similarly, add encounters. I had to keep on passing in arrays. Well, now you can just positionally add encounters. This is not that big of a deal, because it does technically come into play, but it's not that big of a deal because, again, most of our encounters are going to be randomly generated anyway, which means that we're not going to be hard coding in, typically speaking. There may be edge cases, but we won't be typically hard coding in add encounter array object. But this allows us to just pass them in individually. And that obviously resulted in some other code. For example, I believe down here in build combat array, or build combat sequence rather. Okay, no, that is in, we do not add to that one. So not here, but I think somewhere else I had, you know, as I stated before, add encounter with array of objects. So that had to be converted to, instead of array of objects, just the objects themselves. So there is that change. Next change, I believe, was down here. Yeah, okay. So in encounters, since we're handling multiple, I believe this was right here. Let me double check. Yes, it is. Yes. because we're handling multiple add encounters at this point, and it occurs to me, okay, so that was actually something you guys, according to the GitHub, what I was just talking about here with the array of encounters was not actually something you guys saw. That's something I implemented early on. I guess I probably implemented that in session 1 or in part 1 or 2, hour 1 or 2. But by hour 4-ish, let's say, I changed it already. So you guys actually never saw this be an array. However, this I did have to add, which is the second we add more than one encounter at a time. Now we need to actually keep track because we need to set the correct index length. So previously this was just, this just changed it to this dot encounters length -1. Well, now we need our original encounters length -1 instead of our current encounters length -1 because we're adding more than one object. This could also be this dot encounters length minus length of encounters added. That would have been the other way to do it. Either one is fine. There's no real reason why it's one way or another. Let's see. Other things. Other changes. That's all items and stuff. We already talked about everything in map encounters. There shouldn't be anything else there. We already talked about the changes to the encounters. There was an issue I was running into, and I can't remember how I fixed it, where all of a sudden I broke the encounter sequence. Oh, is that down in cycle encounters? That might be down in cycle encounters. Let me check really quick. Encounters. Where's cycle encounters? Huh. I do not see it in the GitHub, but I could have swore I fixed this. In this session. That is really weird. So I'm going to mention it because... Oh, you know what? Maybe it wasn't in this one. Maybe that's why I can't find it. Maybe it was in another... Maybe it was in update? It might have been in update. Nah, it's not an update. Huh. Alright, I don't know what to tell you. Somewhere, I recall having this problem, but basically, and it should be in cycle encounters. I should be able to show it to you in cycle encounters because I know it is the same fix as I used over here. But I was running into this problem where we had leftover encounters from clearing clearing anything, really. I think it was the first time it happened was with the colony. We had the colony sequence still on the game, and therefore when we added the port and colony events onto the stack, or encounters onto the stack, they ended up adding onto the station. They ended up adding onto the station sequence, and then it was not incrementing correctly. So I don't know where that fix went, but that had to be fixed. I recall that being an issue. And then I think the last thing I need to talk about is cleaning up combat got moved. I think that's the last thing I need to talk about. I'm just browsing through the changelog really quick to see if there's anything else. Oh, actually, it does look like there's... Okay, yeah, so minor change in Encounters GUI in the update GUI, which is up here. Let me just update sequence GUI. There we go. It became useful to not pass in a sequence, and this might have actually been the fix. This might have been the fix. I might have somewhere had implemented rather an update sequence GUI null, and see, because we don't set the game object here, so I guess this wasn't it. But now you can pass in null as the sequence GUI, and if the sequence is not there, then first off, we won't try to get the event from the sequence. But these are all the no more encounters options we had these two before, which is that there were just the current sequence was not sorry, derp. The current sequence was at the end of its list. It had no more encounters to give you, therefore it returned null or undefined, one of those two. The other situation now is that we originally passed in the no sequences in order to make use of all these cleanup functions. So this allows us just to call the update sequence GUI in order to just plain clear off everything from combat encounters. So that was the change here. Now, the last thing that I was getting to is over in combat, and technically it came out of the map demo. I pulled it out of the map demo and moved it to combat, but that is the clean actually it should be combat. Oh, okay, I guess this is combat GUI right here. Yep, that is combat GUI. So clean up combat. This used to be, as I stated, over in map demo. We just now instead provide a game instead of using the global game variable. Wow, I cannot talk this morning. So instead, we obviously check to make sure a game is valid, and then if it is, remove all the listeners from everything and set the game.combat to null. And this became a problem when I was going through the dungeon because I kept on stacking the on top of each other. The combats on top of each other, and they weren't actually clearing, so that fixes that. So this now allows us in this combat GUI object that we made before to just have that as a value. So if we come down here to clean up combat, so we clean up combat, and then on our exit, before we call on exit, we pass it in this .combat, because the second we call cleanup combat, that removes this combat from the game. So the cleanup object will no longer have access to the combat we were just running. So we need to give it access back to that combat that we were just running. And that came into account. Let's see. Was it over here? I imagine it'd be over here. Oh, maybe it was on actually map demos itself. I recall this being an issue, having a knock-on effect where... Oh, finish combat. There you go. So, finish combat needs to know who won in order to show the game over screen. And obviously, it can't check what the combat is. It can't do game.combat.victor, game.combat.player. It can't do that if we remove combat from the game object. So therefore, the callback function needs to be provided in the combat so that it can resolve any consequences of what happened in combat. So this had to change to keep up. Now, I forgot to boot up LiteLike here. So let's give me just a half a second. Let's preview. Need to get this over here in order to see it. And that needs to change to the correct page. There we go. And let's get... I don't think we need the... today. So I'm actually going... The control panel. I don't think there's any reason to need the control panel. So let me just set this up without the control panel because I normally compensate for the control panel. Let's see. Just a second. Again, I derped and did not have this set up beforehand. I apologize. 35. There we go. And that should be everything. So here we go. Time for demo. Demo time. Is my streaming software frozen? No? Okay, there it goes. Okay. Alright, so demo. First order of business, come in here, fight this dude. One thing I should say is that I'm thinking that I really should add a pause at the beginning of combat. In theory, the animation for the combat window should be done before combat starts, right? So you should have access to the full combat window at that point. However, the point I'm getting to here is that even at that, even with that delay, that whole entire, okay, you see the combat window opening, so you have a hot second to get yourself prepared. Even at that point, I feel like maybe there should be a slightly longer delay than that, just to get yourself situated. But that's one of those UX calls. As you can see, first thing that we confirm is that this exclamation point has turned into an pound sign, and that means that we no longer can fight the bandit. We cleared the bandit out, we can no longer fight him. Heading over to this. Now, it's one of these things, I'm not going to bother reading through all this, just because, you can read through it in the demo. It's a lot of reading. So, this you are familiar with. This is the first floor. This is the second floor. We're familiar with this encounter. Twitter happily does batteries. This is the floor that is just flavor text. And then this is the floor I was talking about, where we only have two options. We do not have the move on option. This is technically the move on option right now. But I'm going to go ahead and pay the dude for his quote unquote services. And then this is our branching path. So if I attempt to leave here, then I get stopped and I only have the other two options that were left from the beginning. So I'm going to go ahead and fight the goons. And I lost HP, is what happened here. Now, the GUI in the background does not update at this point. I don't know. I mean, I probably should. It probably should update. I will look into that. I believe that's just a matter of me not triggering the adjustment in HP, but I thought that was supposed to trigger automatically, so I'm not sure why exactly this is not updating. This is the message prior to the reward event, so we are now clearing the dungeon. Or not the dungeon, but the station. And here we go. We can go ahead and collect all those resources. Obviously, my backpack is not big enough to get all of it, but we got a lot of scrap out of that. And furthermore, if I recall correctly, reactor power 15, yes. Part of that is they gave us a full tank of gas, was part of that encounter. So we have a full tank of gas. We don't have to worry about making it home. However, we stop here. That is 14 because of rounding. That is why that is 14. It should technically be 15, but as you can see, this is now one of the explored ports, one of the regular port events, which allows us to just pick up repair box and, as I said, refills reactor power. We can come down here, drop everything back off at the colony like normal. We've done this before. However, now we can pick up this geolocating marker. So there's that. There's the supplies for being in a colony or port. And then we can move on to the dungeon, because that's the last thing. Obviously, the colony does not change because the colony is a permanent feature. It does not change into port. Other thing to mention, actually, that I missed is this should have been replaced here. That is going to take a bit of time, I realized, because that is actually going to have to be a flag that sets certain ports as already collected from on the map object. And when we go to the colony, it refreshes that flag so that we can go back and collect from those ports. So that's how that will be fixed in the future. But in a dark room, you could not go back to the same house over and over and over again to exploit the system to keep on getting resources. And we need to implement that feature in this game. So next up, I'm going to say before I go into the combat here that there are problems here. And it was, again, 9:30 all of a sudden out of nowhere, and I was not going to stop to fix all the problems. We're going to just deal with those as we move on. So here we go. So nice little flavor text, and then a monster. And this is problem number one. Whoops. Okay. Problem number one is that, as you saw, the monster was not attacking correctly. There is something definitely wrong with the melee attacks for monsters. What you're actually seeing right here, I'm pretty sure I just died. And this was problem number two. Problem number two is that we're not actually getting the game over screen at the moment, which is not correct. That is most definitely not correct. So I got to figure out where exactly I'm going wrong with that one and fix that one. So I'm going to click this, and now we get the game over screen. So as you can see, the game over screen happens after the reward event, which is a little bit of a problem. So, and then we go, oh, this is the other thing. Yeah, we get the game over event, and then we go into combat with 0 HP, and nothing's happening because combat's already over. So, again, a little bit of problems. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to duck back in here to grab the geolocating marker, and we're going to try this again. Grab our repair bots. Alright, and I'm going to attempt not to die here. This is supposed to be difficult in a dark room. Permadeath was not a thing. I can't remember whether or not I decided permadeath would be a thing in this game. One of those things, it makes sense to me to get a game over strain. So we'll see what happens. In theory, this combat might have to get toned down to be a little bit easier. But again, we'll see what happens. So fight number 2. These are actually against the same monsters, as you might notice. Repair bot really quick. So this planet, I decided this planet is going to have 3 encounters with the same exact monster, and then the boss monster. Just figure it's a planet inhabited by these creatures. Here's our marker screen. So we hit the plant marker, and we can go on to the next combat. So again, this is one of the weak ones. Hit the repair bot really quick so I don't die instantly. Pick him up, and I don't know if it's mathematically possible for me to beat the boss monster. I just kind of put numbers in here, so we might, there's a possibility that I might literally not be able to win this next encounter. For the record. Again, there are problems with it right now, but we spent a lot of time. Yeah, don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die, don't die. Keep on axing. Heal. Okay, cool, we win. Alright, cool. There we go. So there is the monster materials, and then this is the, what do you call it? This is the treasure chest. This is the loot box that we get at the end. Energy sword. That and that. And now we can come back here, and we ran out of gas. This was the other problem, I realized, was we don't actually have enough gas to get out there and back. So one of those things, evidently my balance numbers on the gas tank. Again, I knew the game balance was going to be out of whack, which is why we actually started out with a bigger machine to begin with. I actually switched this over a couple encounters ago to a larger transport. The fact of the matter is, however, is that it looks like if I can't get from here to here on the map in that amount of, in a single gas tank, then frankly, the very lowest tier transport probably needs to have more reactor power than this one does, than this one has. I don't want to have a small, dense map. I want this to feel expansive because it's a space game, all right? So I want a sense of expansiveness. So I don't necessarily want things clustered all over. So I don't want to throw, for example, another bandit fight right here, because if we had another bandit fight right here, then we could hit the bandit fight, hit the this dungeon, and then leave the bandit fight and and make it back to town. Yeah, so that is, in theory, that would work, but I don't particularly want that. I want a bit more space, and I'm thinking about, more to the point, increasing the map size, maybe doubling it. So those are my thoughts so far, and obviously we have things to fix. The game needs to be balanced. One thing that I will mention, because it's important, is obviously, as you saw, a lot of my time was taken up managing items and item creation and monster creation and whatnot. So on that note, in a short while, so at time of stream, this is 9:45-ish. At 10 o'clock, I have scheduled a stream to create a data browser rather, for LiteLike. So we are going to create a program that will allow us to manage all of the items, or I should say, I keep on saying items, all of the data in items.json, combatants.json, etc., etc., etc. So that is the plan moving forward today. That is the next stream I will be doing. Again, that's scheduled for 10 o'clock, so in just a short moment. And that should hopefully speed up the whole entire development process, because obviously I don't have to hop around from different JSON files and then type in all the attributes myself, and etc, etc, etc. That will just do those things for me. It will update the JSON files for me, and it should hopefully also help make sure that things are cross-referenced, so that we know that everything is properly defined. So for example, I kept on double check, or I didn't have to keep on double checking myself because I just had a pattern of how I was designing these things. But I don't have to hop from, for example, the combatants to the English file, the English strings file, and then fill in the name and flavor text all the way over there, and then hop back to combatants to build another one, and then fill in the English translations, and then hop over to weapons, and then fill in the English translations, and etc, etc, etc. So that should save us a bit of time. And yep, that is where we're at. So obviously next session we'll be cleaning up the bugs that we have left over from this, maybe doing some balancing, some game balancing, so that the demo is not, so difficult, considering updating the map size, changing the map to not display ports you've already entered, and fixing the HP update on the station event, so that when your HP changes in the station, you actually can see that in the background up here. So that is everything from me today. Thank you guys for watching if you have been. Look forward to the rest of the series. We are definitely on the downhill stretch now at this point. I say that, but I'm probably going to hit a few bushes on my way down this hill. Anyway, yep. As always, guys, I hope you have a great, wonderful day, afternoon, or evening wherever you're in the world. And I will catch you next time.